Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, hey, I hope that you're doing very, very well and you are excited for today's program. Today on the show, second part of the program, will be computer and technology news, everything related to tech news. We try to keep you up to date. We do it full time and we can barely do it. So, hey, we want to make sure that you stay informed as well. But in the first part of the program, as always, it's dedicated to a very special guest. And today is going to be no different, where we have a company called Aquiline Drones. If you ever wanted to know about drones and where they're at, because, a couple of years ago, they really started making headway into the hobbyist space, the consumer space. But now we're going to be talking about the commercial space. And, where it may be kind of a fun hobby for consumers, it's big business out there, and talk about the extent to which companies are using drones and what's on the horizon, how things are going right now. We have actually the Vice President of Strategic Projects, which is just the guy we want to talk about, hey, how are drones being used in the business space. So everyone, that interview will be in just a moment. Let me just get this out of the way. ComputerAmerica.com. That will have everything from show notes. It will have links to our guest website, past shows, future shows, podcasts, all that and more. If you want to check them out, obviously AquilineDrones.com, or come on over to Computer America after the interview, and we'll have a link right there leading to their site. While you're there, check out some of the articles, some of the reviews, find us on social media, blah blah blah. Okay, I think that's enough. Let's go ahead and get started with today, and really looking forward to this interview. It's this is a little bit behind the scenes, but it's been a long time coming, and I'm happy that it is finally here. So everyone, once again, let me introduce Mr. Roger Nunamann. He is the Vice President of Strategic Projects for Aquiline Drones, and we're very happy to have him on. Roger, welcome on to Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Ben, and really excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. You sound great, and thank you so much for being on the show. And I think a good place to start, as always, the beginning. Let's start with Aquiline Drones. The drone space, it's not like I'm expecting a story like, oh, we started in the 1920s and we're a mom and pop, business. No, drones haven't been around, or, they haven't been around for too long. And I want, when was the company started? What's your mission? And then a little bit of your background. How'd you find yourself working with, in high tech?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Aquiline Drones came out of 4 years of incubation. It was conceived of and founded by our CEO, Barry Alexander. Actually, Barry and I are both left the airlines in order to work on Aquiline Drones. Barry had spent the last 5-6 years flying around the world as a 747 pilot, and he noticed that drones were being actively used and deployed for quite some time in other parts of the world. So that was the impetus of the start of Aquiline Drones. and he wanted to go ahead and bring that capability onshore into the U.S. So he used that time in order to form strategic partnerships and put together a team, outline a business plan. And then Aquiline came out of incubation on January of 2019.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I want to kind of ask you, just kind of for your opinion on this one. You said drones have been used around the world for a little while now. This company was started, obviously a couple of years ago to kind of fill or kind of speed up the adoption of this whole thing. And I wanted to ask you, as far as the technology goes, what do you think was the innovation that led to something like Aquiline drones being, successfully, launched? Is it were the innovations strictly in battery power? Were the innovations in, kind of the wireless signals and sending, high def video and things like that? What do you think are some of the technical innovations that helped Aquiline, kind of do what they do?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And it really is, it's a confluence of a lot of things, not just the technology coming together at the right time and pent up demand for this, but also a relief in regulation. The US is almost a decade behind other parts of the world when it comes to drones, UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle technology. And that is solely driven by the regulatory framework that was in place here in the US. It did not allow the development of the systems here, let alone the deployment. Other parts of the world had a less dense airspace, less complicated airspace, and a more favorable regulatory environment, in large part because of that. So you saw that technology really get honed, developed, and deployed out there. So while this company, when it entered incubation, over 5 years ago now, although it was clear to see there was a need and a market for this really life-altering technology, we could not have predicted the confluence of everything else, coming together at the same time. We were really, really lucky in that respect. So what you're looking at is the FAA opening up the airspace to UAV systems, and the FAA has been given a mandate to safely, and safety is always at the core of everything the FAA does, integrate UAVs into the national airspace, manned aircraft. And you're also looking at the large-scale rollout of 5G technology. You're looking at improvements in power plants and battery life. And you're looking at the growth, the explosion of the Internet of Things, all tying together. And at the core of our technology here at Aquiline is the AD cloud. Okay, we tie everything together. We tie all of the information that's out there from the FAA sources, from third-party sources, from the Internet of Things, the smart devices, into the cloud for a command and control structure, and to be able to not only keep those drones safe and where they're supposed to be and away from not only each other but manned aircraft, but also to remain compliant and also to take all that massive amount of data that's out there that's gathered by drones, both on the ground, in the air, and turn it into something usable.
So it certainly there's a lot of kind of breakdown there, but the first thing is I think how most people view drones, and I'm not sure it's really that much different between the average consumer and I guess policymakers who aren't that well versed in drones, and especially when it comes to things like the airlines, and you just mentioned keeping them away from manned air vehicles. Yeah, we just last year we were talking about a slew of stories that a drone, and I really do think it's like photographers who are trying to get pictures of planes as they take off and land, and being very inconsiderate because we've seen entire airports shut down for 5-6 hours while while law enforcement tries to track down the pilots of these drones because hey, it could be a security risk. What are, what were the regulatory easings that you were talking about? Is it about, just kind of drones are no longer just, either through the military strictly weapons of war, or drones are not as scary as they used to be? I mean, what do you think about drones being used more and more among airports and things like that? Is it I guess the real question is your product safe? Are drones safe to be used in these business applications, and especially around people?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there with that question. And the simple answer, are drones safe? And the answer is yes, if they are handled like the aircraft that they are. Okay.
Hmm.
So the reason why there have been problems, and there's been very public abuses of the use of drones, and there's been collisions with aircraft and shutting down of airports for hours at a time, is because those operators are treating drones like gadgetry. Simply, really not anything different than toys.
Yeah.
And this is where the difference comes in. The fact that we have at the leadership level of Aquiline drones, not just tech gurus and business professionals, but also aviation professionals, that we approach drones as aircraft, miniature aircraft, but aircraft nonetheless, and they need to be treated with the same respect that all aircraft are. You see a lot of very dangerous things happening with drones because the operators aren't aware of the airspace regulatory framework that they're flying within. The FAA considers the airspace starting down at ground level, so anything that's in the air is regulated by the FAA. They don't understand that. They don't understand how the airspace is set up. They don't understand. They don't understand that there are a lot of areas where they're not allowed to fly without explicit permission and planning and advance notification to the FAA. They don't understand that there are limitations on these aircraft, things like certain types of weather, precipitation, certainly wind. They don't understand how these meteorological elements interact with terrain, with trees, with buildings. So when you're operating them as gadgets and as toys, they can be very dangerous. They're very powerful aircraft. They have the ability in almost every industry and every walk of life to make things more safer, more convenient, and a lot more efficient. And as such, but they also have the ability to cause great harm if they're not rolled out responsibly. And that's why when we talked to the FAA and told them what our intentions were and that we want to work with them in order to have these things rolled out responsibly. Our argument was, we're an airline. You've been keeping the airspace safe in the U.S. for decades. Let's go ahead and apply the same principles that you apply to the airlines, to Aquiline drones, and to any other commercial operator out there.
So, and then of course the question becomes, I guess, where do drones kind of succeed? Because if they're being treated just as manned aerial vehicles, the question becomes, what is their new application? If if you could potentially use manned, aerial vehicles. You have, and for anyone out there watching the video portion, we highly encourage you to do that. You have a couple of different, kind of use cases here, and we're going to talk about each of these. But everything from, obviously delivering medical supplies, and we've actually seen this. One of the first times I saw this was a couple of years ago in, I think it was like Africa, where they used a drone to fly essentially blood and plasma to a remote hospital, and it cut travel and saved lives, cut travel time by so much. Organ kind of organ donation, organ transplant, things like that. Talk about some of the more interesting applications from the commercial perspective, because again, we're primarily kind of a consumer electronics show, and we certainly covered these applications before, but I think most people, they see amazing photography from these things. They see videos being shot with drones that just can't happen any other way, and of course sporting events and things like that. But I wanted to you to outline some of the possible applications we're going to start seeing more and more of.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad you brought that up. So those technologies, those use cases that you mentioned, while impressive and fun, they really just scratch the surface of what these aircraft are capable of. When we talk about making, really changing society for the better, okay, we chose our use case to roll out our services very, very carefully. Most of the world, certainly what most of the press out there is, it concerns drones being used as for last mile delivery of consumer goods, okay, which is very important, huge efficiencies, with that technology. So we could do what everybody else was doing, and we could go through the waiver system that exists and
You
have
could
the
be
press there while we
delivering
deliver
burritos
burrito.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine, but I think that doesn't frame the conversation for what it needs to be. So we looked at the use cases that are out there, and we chose organ delivery, and we partnered with a logistics company, very bright people, company called Vertex. They're housing their logistics platform on our cloud. They're one of our first major customers to go ahead and migrate their system to our cloud. And we are developing in partnership with that logistics platform, Vertex, drone delivery system for human organs. There is a huge problem. It's very easy for people to understand that because it touches so many people. There is a huge problem with the timely delivery of organs from donor to recipient. And there is somewhere in the order of around 30% discard rate for healthy, viable organs that have a match and the recipient is ready, simply because it does not arrive on time. Drones have the ability to transport these organs over large distances. We're talking about well in excess of 100 miles, and to do it in a fraction of the time with a point-to-point system, as conventional means now. So that's the system that we're working on, and it is much easier to rally the public behind a use case like that and get the FAA on board and open up designated corridors for this testing. Because again, the FAA is all about safety, and that's what we want. It's very important that this be rolled out safely. The FAA is only going to allow it if we can demonstrate that. Well, we can demonstrate this with this very crucial use case with the public support, demonstrate our cloud, our command and control, demonstrate the safety because of the built-in redundancy in our UAVs and different layers of safety. And then we've gone ahead and developed 99.9% of what you need to deliver a burrito at the same time.
Yeah, of course, and the only difference would be the route, the payload, and that kind of thing. But I got to say that I think a lot of this comes from, as we see with so much other new technology, it's just people not being very familiar with what it can do. And it's, just real quick, if you want to talk about some of those fail safes, because I think that, the first one is I wouldn't be comfortable with the drone flying over my head. What if it what if it crashes on a person, a car? What if it, does X, Y, Z? And I'm sure that you've thought of that at some point, that, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Yeah.
Yes. Safety is at the core of everything we do. It's in our DNA as aviators. Everything that we do when we fly 400 people across the ocean, it's layers of safety and risk mitigation, taking something that's inherently unsafe and making it safe. And the same thing with drones. And I also want to point out, like you so correctly stated, the public isn't really sure what to make of these things yet, and as such, they're understandably apprehensive. If this is not done responsibly, if it's not rolled out safely, if you have a public incident or serious incidents, or even minor incidents, the public is going to sour very, very quickly, and this technology will not be allowed to reach its full potential. So when we look at our UAVs, there's a lot of things that can be put on there in order to make it safe. And I don't want to give anything away too proprietary, but one of the biggest risks in a safe operation with the UAV is the pilot, the human component. That's why the cloud-based command and control, also not only through the cloud, but also through edge computing on the drone itself, so that it can continue to execute the mission and make decisions with real-time data inputs if it were to lose connection temporarily or permanently with the larger cloud is so important. It keeps those human errors from happening.
It's and sorry to cut in here, but it's something that you mentioned a little bit ago, which was being able to. Well, it's the machine learning, artificial intelligence, which we've talked about on the show ad nauseum. But it's taking all those inputs from all those sensors. I'm sure you have camera and moisture and heat and that kind of thing. You have thousands of sensors. You're saying that even if the drone were to lose complete connection to a human, it would still be able to bring itself to a safe stop somewhere and be okay.
Or even continue to fly. Yeah.
Oh, even better.
and yeah, absolutely. And all of the drones are accessible by the FAA, with the FAA's ability to override the drone, to commandeer it and move it out of an airspace that it's not comfortable with, or even simply ground it. And they can see in real time, without going through a third party, right from their own portal, their own dashboard, where every drone is, who it's licensed to, and what the flight plan is. Beyond that, on the hardware side, because machines always fail, that's any machine. Just like manned aircraft, you have redundancy built in so that any single failure will not cause a catastrophic event. You do that by things like flying octocopters that can lose a rotor, they can lose a motor, and still continue to fly with their payload safely, to the ground. You can put in there a safe to ditch algorithm. NASA's developed a beautiful one that can actually look around if an aircraft is no longer able to maintain its flight path, and actually look around and the algorithm can decide the least risk location to set down or to crash, whether it be, field,
right,
pond, right, you name it.
Very, very interesting.
There's also a lot of technology that's been developed here, a lot of it actually locally in the US, just over the last few years with safety chutes. Very lightweight, very, very effective. If all else fails, you can just simply deploy a chute and you can float safely to the ground. There's also a lot of other things that you can put in there too. But the idea is redundancy on all critical components so that when there's a failure or there's a disagreement, the AI can identify the faulty system, take it offline, and take appropriate action.
So I have a pretty fun question for you, and this has to do with, up until this point, we've just said drones, drone. And I don't know what image you have, obviously working for the company, what you have in your head. The image I have in my head is, either the octocopter with, 8 different propellers, and it's something rather larger, obviously something that could carry a smaller sized package or parcel, such as an organ, and transport it across a campus. But the fun question is, what are drones going to look like? What drones are you working with? Because I'm sure that because they're drones, they can take all different shapes and sizes for different applications. What is Aquiline Drones specifically kind of working with?
So we are first and foremost a technology company. That's our cloud is our biggest product, and that's what we chose to roll out first. Okay, and it's designed to be platform agnostic. Not only to work with any type of cloud that Aquiline Drones itself might manufacture or brand, but any manufacturer's drone out there. When you look at the hardware, specifically unmanned aerial vehicles, there really hasn't been any innovation in those aircraft within the last 10 years. Everything that you see out there is essentially some form of an octocopter, quadcopter, some sort of fixed wing, or some sort of a fixed wing VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing type vehicle, and that's it. And then they scale up and they scale down based on the payload. They all fly around the same distance. They have around the same endurance. The innovation is in the cloud. It's in the algorithms. It's the real-time data insights, and it's the command and the control. I just make this point. Any type of drone, regardless of how expensive it is or how inexpensive it is, if it goes up and comes down and doesn't collect any data, it's nothing more than a toy. It has no use to anybody commercially. When you can take that data that it collects and have our AI, have our cloud, turn it instantaneously or near instantaneously into something usable for the customer without having them have to comb through those hours and hours of video, of that forward-looking infrared radar, whatever it may be, temperatures of herds of cattle. That's when you have something valuable. Now, on the other side, when you talk about drones, we've only been talking about UAVs, and I see you have a picture right there of Harvey. That's our unmanned ground vehicle, partnered with a really impressive company, very innovative, called GuardBot, and they are another customer of our cloud. They've gone ahead and migrated their command and control and their analytical software onto the Aquiline drones cloud too. And Harvey can be equipped with just about any sensor that you might equip an aerial vehicle with. Not only can it be equipped with cameras and infrared sensors, it can be equipped with a speaker, so it can communicate with patients, communicate with people it finds when it's on patrol inside or outside of sensitive infrastructure. And it can also be equipped with sprayers, whether it be an agricultural type product or disinfectant. Huge use case for Harvey, disinfecting office buildings, hospitals, completely removing the human component when you're talking about an infectious situation.
Yeah, which obviously very pertinent to today. I got to say that the first time I saw something like Harvey was actually the college I went to a number of years ago was actually considering getting one of these, and they were going to use it as like a security bot because they had like the call stations all over the campus. But of course, as students leave 10 p.m. classes or whatever, they would have something like this kind of roaming the campus, videotaping everything. If you ever needed help, you could kind of yell and it would come over to you and contact the authorities and kind of be that constant security guard that would just always be vigilant 24/7. It's the applications for drones, I guess, are, like you said, the innovation in the hardware is not really there. It's coming, but the innovation in the software side, even when it comes to so many different applications, that's where it's really we're seeing some really cool things. And by the way, just the reason I brought up the drones was because I see here in the notes that we have that you actually have a headquarters in Hartford, Connecticut. And it looks like you have some partners, or maybe you're doing it yourself, that you can produce drones for yourself, I guess, for clients that not only want a software solution, but you'll also be able to provide the drones for that solution if they so choose to go with you.
Absolutely. Like I said, we are first and foremost a technology company, a data-driven company, but we have a equally important second component, and that's additive-based manufacturing, decentralized here within the U.S. Currently, and this is something that we hadn't touched on earlier, but currently 90% of the drone market, the UAV market in the United States, is controlled by one company, and we all know what that company is, and they're Chinese. There is a lot of security concerns. I actually met a gentleman, actually had a beer with him about a year and a half ago. And he worked for the agency that wrote the recommendation to the federal government to stop using Chinese drones. They found out that these drones were capturing data from our most sensitive infrastructure, our bridges, our nuclear power plants. They were patrolling our border. They were patrolling our cities. And all of that data was streaming back to their servers, which were housed within the confines of China.
And we're not going to get too political here. It's going to be its own thing, but I do want to say that we covered that the whole thing about a year and a half ago when when the U.S. put out those recommendations, and I remember having a slight connection here on the show because I felt that and I'm assuming that the drone company you're talking about starts with a D, that you're talking about, but the reason that I was having such a hard time wrapping my brain around it was because it's not just drones that are so capitalized by the Chinese market, production by the Chinese and that kind of thing, but most, if not all, electronics are produced by China, and really almost all production chains run through China at some point, which is why I had a note here to ask you, because you're producing drones here in the U.S., is that even possible? Because at some point there has to be components that still run through China, I would assume, to produce these things.
It is possible. Now, if you want to, it's a question of how far do you want to peel back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're looking at some of the rare earth metals that go in batteries, you know, it gets really hard when you're talking at the very, very basic elements. But when you're talking to actually assemble components, once they get to that point,
mostly software, hardware that would actually be able to, like you said, send, receive data and collect information at that point.
Right. Yeah. The software, absolutely, because we built the software. So, and we built it here, you know, in the U.S. We built it in Hartford. But what isn't available here in the U.S.,
mm-hmm.
You can find by partnering with supply chains in what we'll just call friendly nations. You know, Canada, Europe, Japan. So yes, it is possible.
Okay.
It takes effort. It's not the easiest way to go about building a drone. But when you look at the current environment, you know, without commenting on whether or not it's justified. I mean, that's certainly a full show in and of itself. But the reality is, the environment that we find ourselves in, there is a lot of the temperature is turned against having these drones built in China. And you look at the Drone Security Act of 2019, it's easy to see that we are getting to a point here where certainly at the federal government level, drones that are produced in China are not going to be allowed to fly. The only reason why that hasn't happened yet, why the Drone Security Act of 2019 hasn't been passed into law, is up until recently, there hasn't been an alternative to these UAVs because there isn't anybody else that has the capacity to replace them. They can ground them, but then there's nothing. So that is really, in my opinion, that's the reason why it's been delayed.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and sorry to jump in here, but you know, we see the same issue happen in not just and of course not just drones, but you mentioned the 5G networks, that 5G has a ton of promise and what it's going to be able to do for the Internet of Things, and you know, the real-time sending, receiving of information that I'm sure that your company is going to rely heavily on. Something as simple as, like, let's say a 5G antenna is, you know, those are being produced en masse by Huawei and companies like that. It's you have a real uphill battle, like you said, 90%. I'm shocked that it's not higher than that of drones produced in China. But you really do feel like, as you know, and you can say either as your personal opinion, that this is something that needs to be tackled. That, you know, every drone, every sensor, every 5G, whatever, just too much happens from one country, and it's time to maybe diversify.
Well, we're responding to the market, you know, is what we're doing. Certainly, policies being set at the federal level, and anybody who can demonstrate that their drones are onshored to the greatest extent possible, and what isn't, comes from nations that are, we'll just say, are on the good list, right? Not the naughty list, is going to have an advantage. So, and that's the approach that we're taking.
I gotcha. So
also, Ben, keep in mind where our drones were never meant to be sold at Best Buy or you know, Walmart. They're not consumer drones. They're not drones for the hobbies. They're for serious enterprise level applications. So the supply chains that are out there that you're discussing, you know, they're making hundreds of millions of products, and they're doing it very, very cheaply.
Right.
We don't need that many.
Right, and of course, you know, not so long ago we just had Autodesk, and they do a lot of stuff with you know, CAD design or CAD, computer aided design and construction and things like that. And we talked to them about their use of drones when it comes to our plagued infrastructure, bridges and things like that, and how we need to fix them. So obviously, a single crew, not every single person working on a highway needs a drone, but hey, they should probably have a drone available to them so they can inspect damages and know what they're working with. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's you don't need to make them en masse like it's currently happening. You just need to make really good ones that work when they need to work.
Absolutely, yeah, and address everybody's concerns.
Absolutely. So there's that, and then of course it all comes back to kind of what are the different applications. And I know that we talked about obviously organ delivery and that kind of thing, but I'm seeing here in the notes that we have things like agricultural, construction, security, forestry, management, which would be a huge one. Forest fires just happened. Seems like ages ago due to the news cycle, but it was just like last year or the year before. Horrible fires that I'm sure drones are being utilized more and more. All that being said, all these drones, do you think that I know that you mentioned with airlines, some countries are like 10 years ahead of us. How quickly do you think that this advancement needs to happen? Because, if other countries are already doing this, they're already seeing the benefits of it. How quickly do you think adoption of new uses of drones will happen across the corporate landscape?
It's going to happen quickly. The desire is there. We cannot run through every use case because it's almost infinite. But every industry, talk about asset inspection, right? Inspecting a bridge or even painting a bridge. Now you don't need to have somebody go out and dangle
Very true.
from a harness, right? Firefighting or forestry or fire mitigation. Think of the potential. California has tens of billions of dollars the insurance companies pay out in losses every year from the wildfire season. You could have thousands of drones hovering on a constant basis over the dry forest looking for infrared signatures to show anything greater than a campfire and immediately extinguish the flame or send somebody out there to go ahead and isolate it before it gets out of control. And we can go through 100 different industries and talk about that. And this is all, and it would all be done much cheaper than what's available now using traditional aircraft or other uses. So the demand is there. We get inquiries on a daily basis. Can you do this for us? How soon can this be possible? The FAA is going to drive the timeline as they continue to open up the regulation and get comfortable with the technology and folding it into the airspace.
Right.
By definition, the FAA is risk adverse, but they also have a mandate to answer the demand and allow these things to roll out here, in our airspace. So we're going to continue working with them. We have a great relationship with them. They are very, very receptive, and they're very forward thinking and very, very insightful. I think that you're going to see life-saving technology like our human organ transport.
Right.
That is something that you're going to see put into operation within the next 18 months, 12 to 18 months.
That's exciting.
And then that's going to be, it's going to be very public. It's going to be a test case. It's going to be on a limited basis, and there's going to be a lot of data gathered from it. And that's going to be used by the FAA to allow that, they're going to feel safe to let this roll out. And once that happens, it's going to be almost overnight.
Yeah.
So if you look out your window now, if you have a window in your studio, if you look out, you don't see a single drone out in the airspace. Nothing. That's how big the market is. In 3 years, you're going to look out, and although hopefully it won't be just outside your window, but you'll look up in the sky over the public roads, and you're going to see a highway of UAVs safely transporting goods, gathering data, and just generally making life better.
That's well, and I like how you specified over public roads because that seems like a really good way to kind of handle it. Obviously, you don't want these drones just occupying any airspace because that would be very disruptive.
It would be irresponsible.
Right. So yeah, and obviously there will be a time, and really what you're outlining here is there's a time, there's a place, there's a way to do this effectively and safely, and now we just need to implement it. So, and actually that had my brain thinking that up until this point, I'm trying to think of other solutions, and obviously on like a singular drone basis, this, I'm sure that the drone manufacturing companies had a, here's how to control this drone, here's how to store the data and video and whatever from this drone. But when it comes to fleet management, maybe just, because we're just not in the, we are in the consumer space, I really don't know about it. But talk about how you are trying to change the, I guess, kind of fleet management for these businesses. How much does it cost? Is it, is it going to be easier? Any kind of sophisticated training that needs to happen? Talk about your cloud-based service and how you're changing that field.
Excellent. So it's a subscription basis, and depending on the customer, we can tailor a solution however they want, and it's modular. So they can add layers of functionality and only pay for what they need. We can give them an option to have a one-time upfront fee, or it can be a monthly subscription that ranges currently between $150, $300 a month. Now, as far as what we're talking about, fleet management and sensor management and command and control and all the things that the cloud brings to the customer, we have developed our own digital valet or cognitive assistant, and the avatar is named Spartacus, and that is folded into our dashboard to give a Siri type experience to drone operations. So it uses deep neural networks to learn and improve efficiency and to offer suggestions not only when it comes to planning and staying compliant with the airspace, but also management of assets, MRO services, you name it. And the beautiful thing about Spartacus is it can be used across any business and across any platform. It's mobile. So it can be not only a valet the valet that monitors and controls and provides useful insights into the data and your assets, or your UAV and ground-based UVs operation, but it can also follow you right home and manage all your smart connect devices at home. It can handle everything.
There's certainly a lot of, I guess, flexibility that people will start demanding from their drones, because it won't just be, this drone does one application. It's almost like everything else in our lives. It's like, hey, your dishwasher is not just a dishwasher. Why can't it also, be a voice sensor that lets me control other appliances or things like that? So you're saying that drones in the future will not just be singular purpose; they will be, fully functioning, I guess, systems that you'll be able to control.
Yes, I'm saying that our drones or anybody else's drone that's tied to our cloud, any hardware, as we talked about, the hardware isn't the innovation. Any hardware that's tied to our cloud really doesn't. It's no longer just a drone. Now it's an AI-enabled robot that flies, and that's not something that's in the future. That's something that is built into our cloud today.
Very, very cool. And by the way, I definitely appreciate that you did not name your AI Jarvis like everyone else did. That's, Spartacus is good. I definitely like that. So with with that being said, and I guess the next question would be interest in how much how receptive people are being to this, customers, and you mentioned that everyone is looking forward to this. Obviously, the FAA is trying to work with you, but as far as business application goes, we have a section here in our notes talking about strategic partners and customers and things like that. You're not operating in a vacuum, like you mentioned. There are many other people who produce drones. You're going to be working with them, not against them. There's consortiums, there's expos and things like that. How has Aquiline Drones kind of waded into the waters of other people making these drones? Is it as disorganized over there as I think it is, or is everyone trying to work together and say we need to develop this market?
So when you look out there, okay, everybody's focused on one piece. Everybody other than Aquiline is focused on one piece of the ecosystem, one piece of the environment, whether it be the gadgetry, building a better drone to deliver a package for a delivery company, or a company that is just simply focused on delivering blood samples and test samples across rural areas, or a company that's focused simply on taking high quality pictures and video. Nobody is looking at the entire infrastructure. Nobody's looking at being a premier manufacturer, utilizing 3D printing in a decentralized fashion, like we are. And at the same time, developing the command and control standard that we think the rest of the industry is ultimately going to be held accountable, or it's going to have to meet in order to be able to operate in this complex environment. We're the only ones that are looking at the whole thing and taking, and not only are we not just looking at it, but we're also taking a technology and aviation based approach. So everybody, and there's so much business out there. People are able to stay hyper focused on one aspect of it and kind of try to carve a niche out for themselves. But yeah, I wouldn't say chaotic isn't the term that I would just type. But I would say that everybody's looking at just one little part of the picture, and they're not stepping back and seeing the whole thing and how it ties together. If you find somebody else who is, please let me know. But I've been looking for a while, and we're the only ones that I know of.
Well, and it kind of makes sense because a lot of the drone manufacturers out there, they are trying to serve customers. Let's just take like a parcel delivery company. They aren't trying to take over the logistics for UPS or something like that. They aren't trying to add into the system. They aren't trying to augment, UPS's system to deliver packages. They're just trying to sell them the drones that they want to deliver the package. And obviously you've outlined a number of different sectors that aren't just package delivery. But I can see how people would get super focused on here's the quick money, here's the easy money, make the better drone, sell it to UPS, get your money, and you're done. You're right. You're the first one, at least here on Computer America, that has come with us with this approach.
Not to sound crass or simply just driven by profit, but the money is in the data. Mm-hmm. Money is in the data, and everybody else seems to have missed that. And I think a lot of that comes from, it certainly comes from the insight from our leadership, our CEO, but it also comes from the aviation background that we have here. We're one of only 4 135 airlines with drones on their certificate. We're in the process of molding our certificate into what we need. But the other 3 are Amazon, UPS, and Google. There are hundreds of small drone manufacturers across the U.S., people who are drone operators, people who are focused on other aspects of it. But they're all kind of coming from the mindset that these are kind of appliances or novel gadgets, and they're trying to find a way to kind of make money, make a business out of the existing framework. They're not really working. They may be thinking about it, but they're certainly not taking steps to really unlock the potential with these and have them touch every aspect of our life, of our daily life.
Yeah, and by the way, just kind of thinking about, obviously, don't want to talk too much about COVID-19. I'm sure people have been hearing about that continuously for the past couple months. But yeah. I did want a little perspective from you, because there's a section here about how drones could assist in, let's say, a pandemic like we're having if things were already implemented. We're seeing that, right now, grocery delivery, like, to a lot of people, this whole pandemic was the first time they pulled out their smartphone and said, I want these groceries delivered to my door, and thank you very much. Up until that point, everyone just drove to the store, they were good to go. I feel like that's step 1, and then, maybe step 2 or step 3 is having those groceries delivered en masse to people's homes, as they kind of want it, so let's say, distribution centers look very different than grocery stores do today. Let's envision a future 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long you feel is justified down the road. The next pandemic hits, unfortunately. How do you see kind of drones affecting day-to-day lives, in some kind of emergency? And actually, just to widen it, it doesn't have to be a pandemic. It can be any kind of natural disaster, anything that needs a different response that drones can provide. How do you see drones affecting our future?
Well, I see in three ways: safer, easier, more convenient. Okay, certainly safer because you're eliminating direct human contact. When you're doing a delivery, of course, that's easy to see, but also looking at going ahead and monitoring central essential infrastructure. Okay, now you don't have to have people going out and actually being on patrol or being in the environment where they're at risk. They can monitor it remotely and only send a person in when it's deemed absolutely necessary. You don't have to have people out there on the front lines, so to speak, gathering data. Okay, whether that be the temperature of people, individuals in a crowd, or whether or not somebody is in an area where they're not supposed to be. You name it.
It's and sorry cutting here. I just want to say that that's unfortunately kind of a theme that we've been seeing over the past couple months is these these frontline workers, these first responders, the healthcare. I think healthcare is something completely different, but people working store cash registers and things like that. We've been calling them heroes. We've been saying all this kind of thing, and it's like they're like unfortunate heroes because they have to do that so the rest of us can function in our society. But in an ideal world, even they wouldn't have to put themselves at risk. We wouldn't have to nominate heroes. It would just be, hey, drones could help eliminate a lot of that human contact.
Absolutely. Imagine, we'll say the most essential, a grocery store, food. Obviously, it's been well proven. It's been with us a long time. Checking out your own groceries, you don't even need a cashier. Now you can take it a step further, and you could have Harvey inside the store, rolling around, helping customers find what they need, giving the information that they need autonomously. I mean, we won't even need to have a human, sitting somewhere in a remote location, going and relaying information. Harvey can do that. And if there's a situation where Harvey's not able, for whatever reason, to give the customer what they need, well, then Harvey could switch over to that human being, that customer service agent, off the front lines, and they can have a conversation through Harvey. As far as efficiency, even COVID or pandemic or not, right now, having groceries or anything else delivered at home, you have a vehicle and a person that has to come out there. It burns a tremendous amount of gas. It's labor intensive. It's extremely inefficient. If you have a drone that's electrically powered, carrying just a few essential items at a time, going ahead and dropping in, like I said, not only are you saving the human component, but the amount of emissions that you're saving, and the amount of time that it can be done on. Now it could be mere minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes or less from when you place the order to when it's actually delivered right to your door.
A lot of efficiency to be gained through a system like this, and it's very easy. And this is what I really love about the technology is that it's not even like, imagine if it's like trying to describe the internet before the internet was a thing to people. It was like it was very, very hard to do. But at the same time, with drones, I feel like it's not even a step that far. We have these applications, you are having groceries delivered to your door. It's just, hey, take it a step further, cut out even more human contact, make it even more efficient, and hey, it's just going to be better. This is definitely exciting, and we may have already treaded on this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about kind of the future, really. Not just the future of drones, because that's what we have been talking about, but as far as Aquiline drones in particular, you're coming out of this 4-year incubation period. You are starting to gather your clients and really starting to implement these systems. What is the company future? Is it it seems like you've really tried to make a name for yourself on the software side and, kind of the management side. Is that where you keep going, or is it, like you said, the other half, the hardware manufacturing side as well?
Well, we have modest goals. We want to improve society for everyone.
Very modest.
And
Yeah.
it's our intention that in the very near future, any drone that's used for commercial purposes in the U.S. is going to have some connection to AD. Whether that be our branded drone, whether it be manufactured through one of our decentralized agile workstation cells for somebody else, whether it be tied to our cloud, that it is going to have AD's involvement on some level. Currently, we just greatly expanded our office space. We've taken over 9,000 square feet in downtown Hartford.
Congratulations on your new conquest.
Thank you. Someday I hope to actually see my new office. That was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I haven't been in it yet. But we half of that is earmarked, designated manufacturing space. So currently we're deploying up to 5 agile workstation cells. These are completely self-contained assembly facilities that have a footprint of 15 feet by 15 feet. And they're supported by 3D printing. So we can, in the same agile workstation cell, we can go ahead and we can build Harvey during one shift, and then we can just stack in a whole nother set of parts and a whole new workflow and set of instructions. And then the next shift of techs can go ahead and start building our Aquiline drones. So definitely you're going to see a lot of growth in the manufacturing space. We have plans to take over a 230,000 square foot facility nearby Bridgeport in the very near future. The cloud that we've talked so much about today, which Spartacus is a very big part of, it's been built, it's been tested, and it is in the process of being scaled up. The servers are actually being added to handle the demand of a public launch, and we expect to be rolling that out in the next month or so. Yeah,
and that actually made me realize there's one little tiny important detail we should probably mention. If you're collecting all this data, it has to be secure. I'm assuming that you have taken some kind of steps to make sure that information collected is stored securely.
Absolutely, and we've been one of the partnerships that we've been cultivating for a long time is the U.S. military, and they have the strictest guidelines in order to be able to do business with them when it comes to data security. And we've made sure that the cloud has been built with that in mind to adhere to their standards. So up to all the way up to not only is everything housed onshore with end-to-end encryption, where even Aquiline can't access the data, the customer's data, but also where you actually have the servers locked up and very secure protocols for anybody even enter the room to do work. So it wouldn't be much help to go through all this effort to onshore all this data and then have it be vulnerable to hackers.
Absolutely. So thank you for answering that, and I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of have a last word here. Is there any part that we didn't touch on, Roger? I mean, I feel like we've covered this pretty darn well.
Sure, Ben. Well, you asked about the future. In addition to the very exciting public rollout of our cloud, we're also going to be deploying later this year the world's first drone on-demand service, where you can have an Uber-type experience with a drone. You can actually order them up on an app on your phone, define the mission. Actually, if you want, you can actually have some limited control over the drone, and the drone will show up and autonomously fly the mission, upload your data securely through end-to-end encryption into our cloud that you can access or download at your choosing.
And really, I'm actually fortunate enough to own a drone. It's nothing too fancy, but I actually find it very, very useful for like home, like kind of like home improvement. Inspect the roof every once in a while and things like that.
Yes.
I'm sure that a drone on-demand service, it's again something that you never really consider because the option wasn't there. But once it is, I think a lot of people would be very interested in something like, hey, I heard, I heard something loud hit my roof. Let's order a drone for $5-10 and let's have it look at it. So, man, that is an entire different show. But yeah,
I'll be here. I'll come back.
Perfect. Yeah, no, you're always welcome. And, unfortunately, we have like 30 seconds. So I'll let you go and say if people want to find more information, again, we'll have a link to the website. Is the website the best place for more information, or where should people go?
Website's the best place. Everything's there. There's also a tremendous amount of press, a lot of news that's been written about us in the last 6 months. A Google search under the news section of Aquiline drones will also reveal a lot of information. But I highly recommend that they go to the website. That is where the most current information is, and they can reach out to us if they want to have a deeper conversation.
Perfect. And everyone, once again, aquilinedrones.com if you want to check that out. And Roger, I want to thank you so much. This was like I said, long time coming, but it went perfectly. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll definitely have you back on. So have a great day. Stay safe out there, and thanks for being on the show.
It was a pleasure, Ben. Thank you.
All right,
be
have
safe.
a good one. And now we're going to log off, so we're going to say goodbye, Roger. Everyone else out there, thank you so much for tuning into the program. And hey, we'll catch you next time. And everyone that's Computer America, hey, thank you so much for tuning into the show. And hopefully you enjoyed that as much as we did. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.